Hi YouTube, my name is Cameron Murphy. I'm a member of the Society for a Lost Book Truth. We are researchers that do research on the lost books of the Bible. A lot of people, mostly Christians, don't even know that there are books that were left out of the final version of the Bible. There are many of them, and a lot of the languages that they were written in are dead languages, so they don't exist anymore. And just recently, there was a database that was set up that anybody can access. And what it is it was set up by a museum based in the Netherlands. And what they did was they put together all of the all language, like all symbols and languages from around the world into this database. And basically, what you can do is you can go and you can put in it's almost like a translator. Like you can go in and put in certain symbols, certain languages, and it will try to match up to similar languages, like the shapes of letters. It will try to match that up to the shape of a different letter from a different language. And so that helped us a great deal in deciphering some of the lost books. So anyway, the reason why I'm making a YouTube video is there's some big news, and we wanted to get this out to like a mass populace before it got manipulated by the powers that be, or media, or government. We are a Christian group. We consider ourselves true Christians. We don't buy into Christianity and politics. We don't buy into Christianity being used to manipulate people or sell people something. We study the Bible, we study the lost books of the Bible, and we are followers of true Christianity. So, there's probably going to be a bunch of people who are not going to believe this stuff, and whether or not it's true or not, we don't know. But what we do know so far is that there was a story of Jesus in the book of Elevations, and so I'm going to talk with you a little bit about that right now. Okay, so the book of Elevations. There was a huge gap of Jesus' life that was not documented in the New Testament. Paul didn't write about it, nobody wrote about it, from about the age of 12 to 30. And this is a huge hole, and a lot of people have debated this for many, many centuries about what Jesus was doing during this time. So the reason why the lost books were left out of the final version of the Bible was because and they're not really lost books, not like they were recently discovered. These are stories, these are books that people have known about, the Jews knew about them. The reason why they didn't end up in the final version of the Bible is because the stories seemed too outlandish. They didn't seem believable. And the Book of Elevations was one of them. And basically what the Book of Elevations documents that a lost 18 years of Jesus' life and what he was doing during that time. And it wasn't that there was anything that was unbelievable about what happened to him, except there was one big event that took place, and that's the reason why that whole book was left out of the final version of the Bible. And that event is that there was a tragic accident that happened to Jesus, and I'm going to talk with you about what our researchers have discovered in deciphering the Book of Elevations. So most people know that Jesus was a carpenter, he was a woodworker, and he was also a fisherman. And so during the fishermen of that time used nets mostly, and these were nets that you would throw out into the water. They've got 6 or 7 or 8 weights, and those were stone weights that were carved from stone. Some metals were used, but mostly it was stone. And those were tied to the net, and what would happen is you'd throw this big net out, and you'd have a tether, a line that you would kind of skim through your fingers, and then as soon as it hit the water, you would hold on to that, because if you didn't, then the whole net would take off and it would sink to the bottom. And so basically you throw this thing out over a big school of fish, you pull on the tether as soon as the net hits the water, and that wraps itself around the school of fish, and you pull those up onto the boat. you've got to kind of let that tether sort of slide through your fingers and without letting it go, but also without putting too much pressure on it, because if you do put a lot of pressure on it, the weight of those stones together is going to pull your arm out like this, and it's going to, break tendons, it's going to break, muscles and flesh and even bone. So what happened to Jesus is just that. Fishing in the morning, releases the net, puts too much pressure on the tether, pulls his arm basically off. And so this was a tragedy. In fact, he almost died. But he made it to shore and was taken in by locals in a village and healed, but never, didn't have abilities to do limb transplants then, and so Jesus actually only had one arm. Now, there's the part of the story that seems crazy, and everyone's going to go, oh, there it is, that's the rub right there, okay? Well, think about it this way. If the people who were putting together the books of the Bible left that in, imagine people's perception of the Messiah if they knew that he had been injured like this, and it would not be believable. The supernatural aspect of Jesus would fly out the window, because nobody would believe that the guy can heal the sick and heal the wounded, but he can't heal himself. The reason why there was nothing written about Jesus for 40 years after his death was because the apostles used that time to basically do a cover-up and go around, and any writings about the Messiah all during his time were censored, stolen, people were killed. All of that information was manipulated, and so then that became almost like nobody talked about this guy for a couple of decades, until finally stories, campfire stories about the Messiah started popping up, and then that's when Paul wrote about Jesus. So in the 15th century, during the Renaissance, painters and sculptors were creating images and depictions of Jesus in this traditional way, with him only having one arm, and the Catholic Church was up in arms over this. So there was a lot of censorship, a lot of murder, a lot of manipulation, and subsequently these books were taken. The copies of these lost books that the Catholic Church thought were the only ones in existence, but they weren't, were taken and hidden away or destroyed, and so that the story of the one-armed Jesus could never be told. So basically what we've got is we have people, the significance of the crucifix and the crucifixion, and seeing Jesus depicted on the crucifix with both arms spread out. The whole, that image is part of Christianity. It's a major part of Christianity. And if Christians knew that this was not the true image of Christ, what would happen? You would have mass chaos on a worldwide scale. And that's one of the reasons why we're doing this now, is because we are true Christians, and we want to get this information out in such a way where we can avoid being censored by the Catholic Church, and we can get it out to the mass populace so they can start accepting what Jesus really looked like.